Just one away. Okay, perfect. Hello and welcome to Treasury Talent's latest episode of Ask a Treasurer. This is an Ask Me Anything format where we ask a Treasury leader questions about anything related to careers, job searches, networking relationships, really anything that pertains to those areas. Today's guest is Paul Cyril. Paul's the SVP and Assistant Treasurer at AECOM. Paul, how are you today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me this morning.
No, absolutely. Where in the world do you sit, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, AECOM is based in Southern California in Los Angeles, and that's where I am.
Perfect. Much warmer than Michigan. I think I mentioned the other day we had -9 when I went to the gym. So you're probably dealing with much better weather than I am.
A little bit. I don't want to brag too much, but we're not summer weather here yet. But it's definitely more mild than what you're facing.
Happy to hear it. Happy to hear it. And as always, Scotty John is monitoring the conversation for questions, comments, anything like that. So if you're watching us right now, please, this is your opportunity. You have access to an assistant treasurer or a treasury executive that you wouldn't normally have through conferences, panel discussions, anything like that. So if you have questions about the areas that we've laid out, again, careers, job searches, networking relationships, please ask them. We do have some preset questions, but this is also your opportunity to get some access to Paul. So with that, Paul, I'm going to go ahead and start us off here. How did you come into Treasury, and what's keeping you in Treasury? What made you choose Treasury as your career?
Yes, I've been in Treasury now for about 3.5 years, and my career has been mostly in finance, but I did have some operational experience early on, which I'm happy to talk through. For me, the passion about Treasury is the opportunity to make an impact on the enterprise and on our clients. It in my mind is at the core of what keeps the company healthy and growing. But my career started actually in waste management many years ago, and I was highly interested in recycling and sort of saving the planet when I first started my career. And I realized that I had not sharpened my skills yet in finance. I had taken economics courses, but they weren't oriented towards business economics. And I went back and got my MBA and was immediately attracted to finance, and that became my focus, in my MBA training. So then I had a couple of years, a year or so in investment banking with a small firm here in Southern California. Market there dried up. This is around 9/11 timeframe. But through my network, through the university I attended, I was able to get an introduction to a team at KPMG, where we were doing mostly FP&A type of work. And FP&A became really the core of what I did for the next 4 years before joining AECOM. And at the time I joined AECOM, it was a very exciting time in that we were getting ready to go public. We had been a very large private company up until that point, but a lot of silos in the organization and opportunities to make an impact. And that's really the passion that's kept me at AECOM, is the constant drive for improvement. So I had a career in both FP&A and investor relations most of my time at AECOM. And there was an opportunity to join the Treasury team a little more than 3.5 years ago. Treasurer had been promoted into a CFO role in one of our divisions. And it was an area that, frankly, I was not 100% clear of what it did. I just know that it was at the core of a lot of the decision-making in the organization. And so I raised my hand and landed the opportunity. So my career at AECOM up until that point had gone through FP&A, strategic planning, investor relations, and now Treasury. And it really was an eye-opener to me in just how Treasury fits into the organization. It really hadn't been clear, and the team is, like in most organizations, is pretty small. At a normal corporate organization, you have a very small Treasury team that gets involved in these things. But I sort of piece it all together. Our structure is one where we do get involved in operational performance, whether that's driving cash flow or balance sheet targets in terms of our debt ratios and DSOs. So that is really part and parcel to what my team does on a daily basis. And so it's fun to be not just working with the banks and the rating agencies, but also being involved with operations and pointing out areas for improvement and being part of the team to deliver those improvements. It's really what gets me up in the morning every day is the opportunity to make an impact. And I feel like Treasury, at the very least, if it doesn't become my long-term career, at the very least has been a seminal experience, and that it brought these pieces together for me. In many enterprises, the Treasury team is responsible for all your letters of credit and surety instruments and other guarantee and security. And that is really important in a business like ours, where our clients rely on our financial position when we go and guarantee them that we're going to be delivering a project. So it's really been fun. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a few equity market transactions, as well as some debt market transactions, and then obviously working with our banks on our credit facility, and been through a few cycles of things on that front, and that's been really interesting.
It's so going back to the operational finance and the background, the varied experience previous to moving into Treasury, do you find that that's kind of helped bring a different perspective that's made you more effective as a practitioner, or are you kind of is it a perspective from a different point of view in the business that you're bringing into Treasury to help move operations along?
Yeah, as I said, our Treasury team has kind of operational impacts, is expected to make operational impacts. So having that background to understand what the key drivers are in our business beyond just what the balance sheet says and what the cash flow statement says really does help when you're engaging with a leader on, okay, how can we improve this billing process or this collections process, whatever it might be. Having a deeper understanding and a well-rounded perspective on that really does bring you credibility, as well as makes your efforts more impactful.
Yeah.
And for me too, being at AECOM as long as I have been, I'm able to circle back with people that I've known in an organization of nearly 60,000 people. It's good to have people throughout the organization when you're trying to resolve a matter or find out more information about an issue. So it's the relationships that I built through that process, as well as the knowledge and experience that I gained by seeing different perspectives of the company.
Definitely. And, it speaks to the fact that we talk a lot about how to be a strategic partner to the business, sitting in the practitioner's seat or in the treasurer's seat. It's much easier to meet people where they're at when you've sat in their seat before and you understand the challenges that they face and you're able to offer solutions based on where you're at now.
Absolutely. And as I said, relationships go a long way, and the insights and the feeling of collaboration, because none of this happens without there being two dialogue in our organization.
Scotty, what do you have?
Yeah, thanks. So Paul, we've got a couple of questions from the audience. One of the questions Joe actually already has, and we'll get to it here in a minute. But we had a question around payment automation initiatives and kind of what you see the adoption of those types of initiatives coming from the treasurer's seat in the coming years.
Well, I'm not a practitioner, an expert in all that technology, but our focus has always been around process improvement. And so we do have a team looking at our payment process, and with an organization as large as ours, and it really has been built over the past 30 years, we do have inconsistencies across how we do things in, say, Asia versus EMEA versus what we do in the Americas. So I think first and foremost, what I see as the opportunity is to understand, streamline, and improve the process. The automation will fall out of that. That is definitely new technology or applying new technology. But I think my experience, specifically going through FP&A, is that automating something that is not consistent is very difficult. And you just end up, we use the term, garbage in, garbage out. So I think the effort to understand and harmonize the process first, and then apply the technology on top of that, I think that is, for us, at where we are in the and the maturity curve is really important.
Well, that's perfect. And now going back to your specific career, knowing that you have that varied experience, you found your way into Treasury. Is there any moment that really sticks out to you as career defining, or anything that you hang your hat on saying, yep, like this is my apex? Maybe you haven't hit your apex yet, but is there anything that you're really
Hopefully not. Yeah. No, I think Treasury is a complex animal. You've got a lot of stakeholders. And I think for me, when I start putting these pieces together of the perspective from our bondholders or our banks, internal constituents, and helping, frankly, be an educator internally to AECOM, when you get to that point, I feel like if you're able to teach something, you've mastered it. And I can't say that I've mastered Treasury, but those moments when I'm able to turn the light bulb on for someone who's saying, hey, why don't we just sign this agreement? Well, here's why we don't, or here's another way of looking at it and why it's important. I think that for me, the true satisfaction comes when I'm able to teach somebody to be my partner on items that impact Treasury and impact the enterprise. For me is a really satisfying moment, and hopefully I keep having more of those apexes throughout my career.
Perfect. Well, so let's take you back in time here. Young Paul, just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, coming out of USC. What's the advice that you wish you'd known that you know now, or what do you wish you had been told at that point?
Well, there's not a lot that I regret in terms of decisions I didn't make. I just always had a policy where I would almost never say no to an opportunity. Your career, as I've demonstrated, is not necessarily a straight line from bottom to the top, but it's been really satisfying to see and do different things throughout my career. So, and as I said, I haven't done FP&A. I stepped away to do IR and then back into finance and treasury. So I just feel like, the default answer when the opportunity faces you is yes, and then you determine if that is maybe over time, once you've experienced it, you can make a better decision. But I feel like, leaving your mind open and your career open to different things, I think is really important, because it keeps you satisfied and opens more doors for you, brings a new perspective. So that's the one thing I would probably highlight is there's more than one way to do this. There's not one path through your career, and being open to change and being open to new opportunities has kept me passionate about what I do. And at the same time, I've learned. The other thing I'd say, Joe, is sort of the hunger, intellectual hunger to learn and understand things. I mean, I feel like accepting one answer when you haven't fully understood it is one way to sort of limit yourself. I think being intellectually curious about what you're accomplishing and why, I think it enriches your career, enriches you personally as well. So keeping that intellectual curiosity alive, I think, is really important.
Oh, that's perfect. It goes along with the new challenges, new engagement, and just keeping yourself open to that. And your answer to that question lines very closely with what I find myself saying quite a bit is it's not always a career ladder. Sometimes it's career jungle gym, right? Like the path isn't always clear. Sometimes you have to move laterally or maybe take a step back to take 3 steps forward, whatever it may be. Just continue to challenge yourself. And worst case scenario, you're developing yourself as a professional, and you never know when those skills might come into play.
That's right.
Scotty, you came off of mute for a second. Do we have any other questions?
We do. We have a follow-up question. And frankly, I think you may have already answered this, Paul, when you talked about, how you see automation in Treasury and the importance of establishing processes. But I guess specifically around some of these Treasury transformation projects that we're seeing, and particularly implementations of either TMS, Treasury management systems or enterprise resource planning systems. Do you have any more to say around that specifically? Again, I think you may have addressed it already, but just a question from the audience that, wanting some specifics around that in particular.
I think from what I've seen in terms of TMS, and we do use a system for that, is that what would be normally a very manual process where there was maybe questionable accuracy getting through that, but TMS really does help us get to a crisper view of our positions. In a company as large and as complex as we are, it really is one of the key tools that we use to understand and help decision make, because we are, like in every organization, we're daily forecasting everything we need and where our positions are. And TMS really does allow us, and we probably don't use it to its fullest capabilities. We use it for critical items, but I do find that it is insightful. And as I said, if it helps us make a better decision, we should be, that's really what it comes down to. And what fall out of that, and specifically with TMS, is potentially some more efficiencies, more predictability of the data and information that you're seeking.
Yeah. That's perfect, and thank you for that insight. I want to jump back into the I guess the less technical piece of this. You had mentioned, one of the secrets to your career, what you would tell yourself earlier in your career is stay intellectually curious. How does that play into things that you look for when you go to hire into your team? What are the common attributes that you look for, whether it's technical or soft skills?
Yeah, I try to find out when I'm talking to folks, how passionate they are about what they do. If they kind of envision their responsibility to be, well, I show up at 9 and I'll leave at 5, and I kind of turn on, then I turn off. That is, for one thing, that's a little different culture than what we have cultivated at the current company. And it tells me that maybe that candidate isn't as curious. So I like to challenge candidates a little bit and say, well, do you think about the challenges you had at work, after work, or before work? Or for me, speaking from my perspective, is sometimes a light bulb goes off in the middle of the night. Like that's a question I should be asking, or that's a potential solution here. And somebody who just envisions themselves like, I'm going to punch the clock, probably has a really great role somewhere in the organization. But in terms of the folks that I like to surround myself with, in terms of being part of our team, I need my team. I expect my team to be, asking questions, being curious, thinking about things afterwards, and coming up with new ideas. Because you can't rely on one person to innovate in an organization. It really has to be part of the culture and expectations. So that's a key area that I try to get alignment on. Is just what makes you tick, what is in your mind or in your body that makes you energetic and passionate, and understanding that and articulating that is really important for me as a hiring manager.
That's perfect, and I think it gives me some insight into your leadership style too, because if you have that expectation and that's what you're setting with your team, you're trying to drive innovation that way. It's, hey, you have a voice in this. If you see something, please speak up. And that's how you get engagement out of your employees. That's how, and engagement leads to retention, and it also leads to innovation in a lot of different ways. So I love that answer. Thank you for sharing that. Scotty, what do you have?
Yeah, so I know we're bouncing all over the place, but that's what we get when we have an Ask Me Anything format here, Paul. So we got a question around, the strategy you employed to help manage liquidity over the past 11 months with this COVID, obviously health crisis, but of course, what led to a liquidity crisis in a lot of businesses.
Right. Well, I mean, we have, I can't go into a lot of detail on any proprietary that we've done, but, I think raising the awareness and the importance of liquidity during uncertain times, whether it's COVID or otherwise, is really important. It takes an entire organization to contribute to this, whether that is driving cash flows, managing balance sheet. It's not just one person or one team's job, it's really the entire organization. So an engagement and strategy that encompasses the full aspect of the organization, I think, is really important.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think just, you're part of a team that's ultimately driving the cash and liquidity overall. It's not just you have your input, and that's where all those different points of views become valuable. And there's no reason to get into a specific strategy because, you get into trade secrets and everything else, but Hey, that's that answer satisfies me. I hope it satisfies the viewer as well. So, Scotty, go ahead.
Not to mention, I mean, every company is different, right? So there's not a strategy. If you were to share the strategy that worked for you guys at AECOM, it's not going to apply most likely to another organization. But I think the high level is what we were going for there. And yeah, that was perfect.
For sure. Do we have anything else from the audience?
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure if Joey may actually had planned to cover this, but
Go ahead and ask it.
Yeah, there's one other question, and this is a question we often Simon often asks in the podcast, and that really is just, especially with the advancements in technology, how do you see the role of the treasurer changing in the coming years?
Good question. Well, I think that I see the technology. Maybe I'm a little bit dated on this one, but I see the technology as really an enabler, and I think gaining a deeper understanding of those tools that enable Treasury to do its job and be an influence in the organization is going to be important. That's probably a key change there as this technology comes in. But at the same time, I think the core purpose of the Treasury function and how it contributes to our organization is likely not to change significantly. I find that change is slow, in terms of the environment we work in, whether it's working with banks or regulators or bondholders. So the pace of change on the external side is pretty slow, and having a firm understanding of that, I feel like will remain as key to the function in Treasury. At the same time, as I said, the focus, as most companies are, around efficiency, transparency, accountability. Those all can be enabled better through the application of technology. And, I don't see the Treasury team becoming technologists on their own, but I think having a knowledge of how to apply those tools will become increasingly important.
Perfect.
It speaks to the intellectual curiosity that you kind of mentioned earlier. And I guess there is a follow-up question. Perhaps that's going to be the answer. This is a tough question, but the audience is asking, what would you say would be the number one quality that's going to make a Treasury professional stand out in the coming years?
I think it's a lot of what I've talked about already, is that intellectual curiosity, there's other core skills, like being able to communicate, being able to, as I said, be a teacher, understand it well enough that you can teach others and influence others in the organization. I feel like those core capabilities are going to remain very important. I guess I would, as I said, I think enhancements around understanding the technology tools and how those can be applied, those will become increasingly important as well. But I wouldn't put that as a higher priority over being a leader and being intellectually curious and being a good communicator in your field.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I don't have anything. I'm not a practitioner. I can't speak with it, but I definitely align with your answer. And I think that's a satisfactory answer. And it does tie back into my line of questioning too. I know we touched on it in terms of what you look for when you go to hire. Do you focus more on softer skills? Are you looking more for subject matter expertise and technical expertise? Is it more situational? Like, how does that work out when you're going to add into your team?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on what level we're talking about here. I use the resume as sort of the capability, the technical capability score sheet. Have you done this? Have you not done this? I feel like if you've learned one ERP system, you could probably learn another one. I mean, I'm not asking folks to program here, but with SAP, and then you're interviewing in an Oracle shop, it's like they sort of work similar, and understanding those components and then translating that experience into the new organization is important. So at a lower level hiring, I'm more focused on the understanding those capabilities through the interview process, and maybe a little bit less on the softer skills. But as you get a little bit more mature, I expect that somebody who's spent 5 years in Treasury has worked with a TMS, has done bank recs, and kind of core technical capabilities should be relatively sound. Obviously, every organization is different, and I focus more at the higher level hiring on those softer skills to understand, okay, so how have you made an influence on the organization? How do you think about the role that you're playing in the organization, and whether you are a catalyst of change, or if you're just sit back at your desk and let it all happen around you.
Yeah.
Really, as you get more mature, those become more and more important to me. At the lower level, I mean, we can enhance those technical skills, but you should be demonstrating, early in your career, you should be trying to gain those technical skills such that you can continue to evolve and lead, whether you're leading as an official leader or leading as just an analyst that's providing information to somebody who's making a decision. I think it's that ability to then apply those technical skills in your day-to-day and making a difference to organization is really important.
Perfect. And I'm gonna, I know we have a hard stop coming up in 5 minutes, so I'm gonna send out a last call to the audience. If you do have any questions, please jump in and ask them. Will be your last opportunity. I have one more question for Paul, but Scotty, you've just come off of mute. What do you have?
I just want to mention to the audience, as much as this isn't Ask Me Anything, there are some of your questions that are probably getting into some areas that Paul just can't disclose. So just, again, I guess a disclaimer that if you're not hearing us ask your question, that's the reason as to why.
Yeah, we have to stay away from company strategy or anything that could get Paul into trouble. So that's why we're keeping it more toward his advice toward careers and networking and jobs and relationships and everything that comes along with that. So with that, just to add on to the softer technical debate, do you put any weight, and I'm not trying to get you in trouble with the AFP, but do you put any weight behind a CTP or a CFA if it's on a resume?
Yeah, my perspective on it is a little different, obviously. I don't, I didn't come up through the Treasury ranks like a lot of folks have, and so I have nothing against it. I think it demonstrates your interest in Treasury, demonstrates the potential for some technical skills and certainly understanding of Treasury accounting, and I think that is important. I guess if I had two resumes and one person had the training and somebody didn't, I'd still want to go through the interview process, because, as I said, a lot of the skills you can translate into a new career path. And I, also obviously don't want to, as I said early on in the conversation, just that keeping your door open to new opportunities. So I wouldn't discount somebody that didn't have those training. Obviously, the training itself is helpful and demonstrates your key interest in it. I think if you are passionate about learning, then that should just be part and parcel to your development, is to get those certifications, do the training, and deepen your understanding. It's a great way to. I've learned a lot of what I've learned, on the job. I've had that privilege of being able to do that. Not everybody has had the opportunity to kind of accelerate their understanding of something by doing it. And I think the doing, though, is an important aspect of it, gaining the actual experience in addition to the certifications.
No, that's perfect. And I always like to ask that question to get it from a Treasury executive's perspective, because we get that question quite a bit. Should I pursue my CFA? Should I pursue my CTP? Is there one that's valued heavier than the other? And my kind of default response is always, look, you'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So why not make the investment yourself? Because if anything, it shows that you have at least some technical mastery that can be translated across different organizations.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Scotty, anything else from the audience? All right, perfect. Well, Paul, I know we do have this hard stop, so I'm going to take you off the hot seat. Thank you very much for your time and for your insight. And Treasury community, thanks as always for tuning in. This will conclude Ask a Treasurer, and we thank Paul for his time. Be sure to tune in Mondays for Ask a Treasury Recruiter, Wednesdays for our practitioner conversations, and then Fridays with Ask a Treasurer. So Paul, with that, you're officially off. Thank you very much.
Thank you.